So, ladies and gentlemen, we've now got some chairs set up on the stage, as you can see, and we're going to have two different panel discussions, pretty much back to back, featuring various people, all involved in caring. And we've got a couple of them. Aditi and Tim will be in our second panel as lived experience carers. But the other who are in that video, of course, but there's a couple of others who are in that video. Young Josh, where are you, Josh? Over there. And Valerie, where's Valerie? Big round of applause to both of them as well who are here today. The stars of our video, thanks for coming along as well. We really appreciate you guys being here and helping share your story. We'll have a chat to these guys. Everyone's free to chat outside. If you see them and you've heard someone or they've asked a question or you've seen them on stage, stop and have a chat. I think one of the great things over these couple of days is just learning as much as you can from everyone else's experiences as well. Okay, our first four panellists, though, come on up. I'll introduce you properly in a minute. Come on up and grab a seat. We have Keddy, Teresa, Chrissy and Claire. Come and grab your spot and I'll tell everyone exactly who you are in a moment. You're in that one. Keddy, just there. Yep. No, here. Oh, Claire. Sorry, Claire. You're there. Keddy's there. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, not too much talking yet. You've got microphones on. Everyone will hear everything you're saying, which can always be fun. But no, we do encourage lots of talking, and we want the panel discussions to run as freely and openly as possible. If anyone has a question, like we've been doing for our previous speakers, please just raise your hand nice and high so the people with the roving microphones can see you. Those of you watching online, you can use the live Q&A function to the right of the video stream. We encourage you to submit any questions and we can get to those as well. Questions online can be submitted anonymously. And those of you in the room, as I say, if you've got a question, please raise your hand nice and high and do use the microphone when it comes around to you for questions. That way the people watching online can hear what you're asking as well. So I'll introduce our guests. So from left to right, Keddy is next to me. Keddy Crystal from Grey, the GLBTI Rights in Ageing Inc. Executive Officer. Now, GLBTI Rights in Ageing is a not-for-profit, community-based organisation working to ensure that older GLBTI people are safe and respected. Keddy has worked in the domestic violence sector for over 35 years and is keen to make a positive contribution to improving the well-being and choices of LGBTI people as they age. Keddy is the Deputy Chair of the Women's Hall of Fame Board, the Chair of Standing Shoulder to Shoulder, a member of there's so many acronyms here, the SHQ GLBTIQ Advisory Group. Maybe you can tell us more about that in a moment. And she was a member of the City of Perth's LGBTIQA Plus Advisory Group. Did I get all the acronyms right? Almost? Okay. Please welcome Keddy. And Teresa Kwok next to her, the CEO of the Chung Wah Association. Under the umbrella of Chung Wah, Teresa Kwok is the CEO and architect of Chung Wah Community Care since its inception about 40 years ago. Teresa has always been passionate about improving the access and equity for culturally and linguistically diverse communities. With her social work background and experience liaising with a diverse range of individuals, community groups, service providers and government departments, she influences and drives change with innovation. Welcome, Teresa. Now, Chrissy Fearon is from Carers WA, Program Manager, Young Carers and Carer Support Counselling. So Chrissy has been the Program Manager at Carers WA for 3.5 years and is responsible for both the Young Carer and the Carer Support Counselling teams. Chrissy has lived experience as a young carer herself, as a parent of children with a disability and mental health concerns. Chrissy did what most young carers do and became a professional carer, qualifying originally as a registered nurse. For the past 20 plus years, Chrissy has worked in non-clinical project and leadership roles for community health providers in both Australia and New Zealand for physical and mental health services, including suicide prevention. Welcome, Chrissy. And Claire Gibellini up the end, People with Disability Australia Vice President. She's the loud, naughty one, she's already told me. Claire's a disabled woman and carer who has a particular passion for building employment opportunities for all. Her current work focuses on creating sustainable outcomes for people who don't fit the 9-to-5 model of employment. Claire is a board member of the Southwest Autism Network. She's also a member of the Western Australian Disability Advisory Council and volunteers for the Red Dust healers. I'm not sure what they are either, but maybe we'll find out. Claire, just show us your T-shirt as we say welcome to Claire. Only because I kind of liked that. So as you can see, I mean, our theme is the diversity of carers for this panel session, and we've got our two sets of people to speak to. So everyone's got their own different background, their own different areas of expertise. So again, if there's any questions you'd like to fire at them, please do. Ketty, I'll start with you. Maybe the specific challenges, differences, needs when it comes to carers with the LGBTQI background.
Okay. Well, first up, there's very little research in this area around the particular needs of LGBTI carers. And that would be something to really look at recommending and changing. So what we know is that lesbian, bisexual and trans women make up the bulk of carers, and about somewhere between 15 to 30% of LGBTI people take on a caring role at some point in their life. Often they're caring for a partner or a friend, because we know the LGBTI community often seeks out family of choice rather than family that they're related to when they're looking for someone who's going to care for them in their life. So those connections are really important. We do see that sometimes older LGBTI people do end up being the carers of relatives, because they're seen as often single people without other commitments like children, and they're often the ones expected to take on the care of biological relatives. But for people in need of care, they will often choose from their circle of friends or ex-partners or current partners when they're seeking a carer. Obviously, the two big issues for an LGBTI carer are their sexual orientation or their gender identity, or both, and whether they're able to be out in their life and in their caring role in regards to their sexual orientation or their gender identity. It's much healthier if they're able to be out, much better for their own well-being. But we also know that many older LGBTI people who are carers are unlikely to be out. And also young LGBTI people who are caring also may not feel safe to be out. And so that's an added stress in their lives. And that stress is because they have experienced or they expect to experience discrimination and prejudice when they seek out services from the heteronormative mainstream service providers. So those fears, real or unreal or just perceived to be what's going to happen to them, make it very likely that they're much slower to reach out for support services when they need it. They're much more likely to be invisible out there and at high risk of isolation. And that, of course, adds to the likelihood that LGBTI carers are quite often likely to burn out very soon in their role because they lack that support.
Thank you for that. Chrissy, your focus on young carers. Talk to us about young carers. It's funny, with some of the little dot points, there was a question provided saying, what's a typical young carer? There's probably no such thing, is there?
There's no such thing as a typical young carer. Every person, every carer anyway, is an individual in their own journey. And for a young carer, that's exactly the same. You've got such a wide age range from 8 to 25. Each of them are developing within their own youth, 8 to 12, 13 to 18, and 19 to 25. So I would say typical young carer obviously doesn't look like me, usually 30 years younger than I am, about that height and that wide. But basically, everybody's journey is individual. I think the young carer traditional view that people have, and I heard it mentioned yesterday about a young carer, is they always assume that the young carer is caring for a sibling. What we understand in the hidden carers is that we, and my team work with a lot of, is carers who are actually young carers and young people who are actually looking after an adult who is the care recipient. So that's classed as the hidden carer. while you have the Carers Recognition Act is very inclusive in its understanding of carers. Carers WA covers all aspects of the caring role, whether it's mental health, disability, aged care, drug and alcohol affected. We cover all of that caring aspects. A lot of the other service providers, whether disability or mental health, they'll cover the caring roles that are specific within their service delivery. So young carers often are growing up with their own emotional needs as well. They're trying to develop as a child out there, trying to find a position in their social. They're still bringing up and fitting in with their social needs, with their schooling. Under 18s, they've got no consent. So while we work on the carer gateway system, where an adult and a consenting adult is more likely to ring up and say, I'm a carer, this is what I can do, consent is established straight away. For those young people that my team work with, we usually have about 3 touch points before we can actually work with that young person. So the referral comes in, we talk to the referrer, whether that's the school, the service provider, if they've recognised it, or often we get a lot of referrals from loving parents who know that they're struggling and are wanting the best for their young person. We'll talk to we're on board. We'll always talk with the parent as much as possible and keep them involved in the process, because we know that they're a good supporting role. But then and then we'll talk to the school as well. But that's before we can actually get to the rights of the child and put what that child's rights are and put them first. Because at the end of the day, it is about the young carer, what their needs are. And one of the struggles that they have is they're not used to being asked, what is it that you need? They're used to being told what they need. So one of the things that we work through is trying to get their voice out. All of my team are already credentialed in the National Principles of Child Safe Organisations that came out in November 2020 and is rolling out here in WA. It is the primary focus of the Commissioner for Children's Office this year and is rolling out within the government departments. So we have a Young Carer Charter, which when we're working with organisations and schools, it's about how to work with young people. We also have a code of conduct for how the team are meant to work with young people and how we expect other people to do, because it's always putting their voice forward. So the challenges of working with a young person is that they're hidden. There's assumptions that they fit in a certain cohort of a type of young carer, whereas they're actually across the board and everything, and also that their voice isn't heard.
Thank you. Once we've heard from all of our panellists, then feel free to put your arm in the air and ask some questions. Claire, I wonder if you can talk to us about that intersection of being a carer and a person with a disability.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation. I was doing a little bit of research for another piece of work just recently, and I was speaking to the Australian Human Rights Commission. We are either or. We are either a person with a disability or we are a carer. There's when you talk about intersectionality, there is no recognition that we are often both. I don't think there would be a lot of people in this room who would fit into both camps. But when you talk about supports and services, there is often that understanding is often missing. So we might qualify for carer support services that may not be accessible for the needs of us as a person with a disability. We may be eligible for disability supports and services, but the funding bodies have no understanding of the dual role between, a person who has a disability who may be caring for others. So I think, there's no data that exists on how many of us there are. So it's very challenging when you are trying to walk both sides of that line. It impacts in so many ways. As a person with a disability, you will have your own things like therapy needs or, supports that you might need to be accessing. But then as a carer, you will be wanting to support the people that you love to do that too. So we become very time poor, navigating things like the NDIS can sometimes be a full-time job. When there's 2 of you in the house, it's even more challenging. Just yesterday I had a conversation with someone who was trying to get the NDIS planner to understand that I am a person with a disability who supports another person with a disability, and trying to get them to understand that my support needs are not just about me. All right, so that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we face in terms of getting access to the supports and services that can mean that we can continue to be a carer. We save the government a lot of money, do we not?
Yes.
So being able to walk in both camps with appropriate services that are accessible to our needs, it's not happening, and it is a big gap.
You know what I also noticed then, pretty much with all of you across the line then when you're speaking about it, I'm just wondering about the sort of legal implications with what you're talking about. There's a whole lot of gaps. You're talking about it with young people who might not be of legal adult age. You're talking about it with people who might be choosing their family rather than being legally. Is that fair then that, there are these legal minefields among everything that you're trying to do as well?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the experiences for many years, it's slightly improved now, the Marriage Equality Act has improved it significantly, but for many years, LGBTI people had been in long-term relationships with their partner for 30 or 40 years. The partner may have died, and legally the biological family would step in at that point of death and crisis and grief and strip all the assets and belongings and basically ignore the rights and needs of the long-term partner of the person who had died.
Do you want to add anything more about that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of areas where I really see the impact. One is particularly around guardianship. I'm not going to open that minefield, okay? But, there is sometimes a requirement for guardianship, and some of the families that I've worked with, just because the carer or the key support person is a person with a disability, it is much harder for them to be recognised in that role or to be supported to undertake that role. There are, again, not supports and services that exist to really support guardians who may be in that space. And another one, it seems to be, it's mostly resolved now, but within funding for people with a disability around housing, we had a rule not so long ago that specialist disability accommodation was only available to the individual, and if you lived with or if you were married, then they had to go live somewhere else. So, that is slowly changing, but it is very difficult sometimes as a person with a disability to be recognised as having capacity.
Yes.
It's even happened to me. I mean, I'm, all of those wonderful things that you listed, my lovely husband is sitting over there in the back having rescued me to bring my laptop today that I forgot. We've been in situations where I'm not deemed as capable because I'm open about my disability, and they will defer to him. But in our family, am I right, dear? I am the key decision maker. Do you see how clever he is?
He's nodding.
But, there is sometimes in that legalese, in representation, in health, in all of those sorts of things, when you identify openly as having a disability, then you are automatically somehow less capable.
But we don't want to discourage people from being open about their disability.
Absolutely not. Hence the T-shirt.
Can I?
Yeah.
It is not only that it's very controversial or vague, because in our experience, say for example, if a mom is having dementia, but before that, and then sometimes son, it is always more important than daughter. Somehow, still have this notion. But in actual fact, we see so many cases. The daughter has been the one who really day in, day out caring for mom and all that. But at the time, the guardianship, the EPA and all that is not with the daughter. But whatever it is, the decision making may not be of the best interest for the service recipient. So these are the time you see so many of the family dynamics and dysfunctioning and the the hardship, felt by say like if I am the one 24 hours caring for mom, but I have no say. So these are the kind of thing which, if there is somewhere the right, how to judge who got the right, in judging the caring role.
Chrissy, are there any other gaps in the system? I'm sure there are lots, but any others that you want that you want to highlight?
Well, just going back to the legal aspects with young carers, obviously we've got the consenting thing, and I think I've got amazing practitioners who are very confident, competent, and capable in working in the field that we do, particularly for young people under the age of 18. And being able to navigate the legalities out there. A lot of our role is around risk management, safe for practitioners, safe for the family, and safe for the organisation as well. So being able to navigate all that world out there, and when you have and clarifying consent. So that's around a lot of the things that we have to concern around. The gaps in the services. Well, let me start. Mental Health Act. Let's start with the Carers Recognition Act to start with. While it recognises young people and the age of a young carer, young carers are from the age of 8 upwards. I think it only mentions young carers once or twice in the Carers Recognition Act. So the young carers are in there by age definition, definitely, but their needs are such and not as not as profound. And I believe that is something that is from a systemic advocacy perspective that we are also aware of and working on with that as well within the Act. The Mental Health Act recognises carers. And when it talks about youth, it's assuming that youth are actually the care recipients. It's not assuming that the young person is actually looking after an adult that is the care recipient. So adding that under 18, a young person developing in their own maturity, navigating the world, their school system, their university, trying to get on with their life, not having a supporting adult who can help them navigate MyGov, navigate the carer support payments. So it's those life skill things that they're missing out on because they're adult, for no fault of their own, and often very loving families have not got the life skills to be able to then parent and guide and mentor that young person in what is a very online world that we're dealing with. The education system. We've got a one-size-fits-all education system that I think we started out at the beginning of the century and hasn't really developed much further than that. And if you don't fit that one-size-fits education system, then life's pretty tough for you. So we work with some amazing schools out there that are fabulous and that we're working with very encompassing. And then we're working with some schools that if you don't fit that, you're out because you don't make their academic record look pretty good. So we do a lot of advocacy, and my team go out there and do a lot of advocacy between parents, families, children and school, and we sit around the table and we I just wouldn't like to be a fly on the wall when my team are sat in there. That's good because some of those conversations are pretty powerful. But understanding, I don't know whether a lot of you know this, but young people, if they're caring at home, that caring can actually be recognised under the waste system. And that can actually be put against their ability to pass their waste. And unfortunately, that's a conversation that we often have to explain to the school system, that child has that ability and that right to have their caring role formally recognised within their education system. I can give you the clauses, and I can give, it's actually on our Young Carer site. The youth payments and the financial abilities. We're wanting our young people to become responsible, contributing adults in society. However, in their caring role and the financial payments that go forward, if they go out and get a job or if they go out and get another benefit, it's in some sense, it's actually means tested. So it actually disables them from being able to get out and be independent because money then gets taken off their adults' benefit. So they're being actively discouraged because it's not a collective for the family. So we're not formally recognising this young person, and we're actually chaining them to their dependency and their codependency of that caring relationship. NDIS.
Every time that gets mentioned in the past 2 days, you just hear this, oh.
NDIS, whoa, conversations we've had here. many of you, before my time, I know at the time I worked with I joined Carers WA just as the NDIS system was transitioning in and the old funding system was transitioning out. And I know many of you here will have memories of a lot of the respite stuff that Carers WA used to do for the young people. Fortunately, that all transitioned out on the understanding that the NDIS would actually provide all of that, and there would be some provisions for respite for young carers under the NDIS. It's not. And again, that's another part of our systemic advocacy that we're trying to work forward. Also with respite is different than what it is for an older person, because especially if you've got a young person, you can't put them in a hotel to have room. Who's going to look after them? Who's going to be responsible for that? You can't take away the family and leave them at home, because who's going to look after them? Who's responsible for that? So respite for young people is quite different. It's about allowing them to connect into their community, giving them opportunities so they can go to the basketball play, so that they can get connecting with their friend. It might be giving them some travel vouchers so that they can get the transport, because guess what? They can't drive the car. And if their parent is, and for financial reasons, they may not have a car because they're struggling financially as well. Claire, I'm going to throw it to you because I know you're burning on the side there.
I went to work there. I was a brunette before I started. I think also, you know, just furthering on, you know, the impact particularly for young carers, the NDIA really need to start having conversations with carer groups and Carers WA and things like that, because what happens particularly for young carers is they are recognised as an informal support, but then there's not a recognition about whether or not that informal support is appropriate. So by placing that back in the hands of the young carers, you're actually building entrenched economic disadvantage. The young person is not able to get schoolwork done or, you know, able to work. And so that actually then, you know, continues a cycle.
It does.
You know,
and part of, we know from the research, if we don't get in there early enough, then what we would build, because their caring role doesn't change, they're still looking after their parent, and that's, or they're still looking after their sibling, and the responsibility starts. And if we don't get in there to give them hope, to give them and help them with their education, show them what their options are, the cycle starts again. And a lot of what we do is around giving them hope and giving them a right to. They have a right to an education. People talk about, one of my colleagues and I were in a meeting with one of the regional directors of the Ministry for Education, and she was wondering why children aren't coming back to school, because they don't want to. So we had a separate meeting with her. I don't think there's any one child that we've ever worked with that doesn't want to go back to school, because they understand absolutely the value of that education. It's because they can't get there. They've got home responsibilities. They're looking after their sibling in the morning to help them put the lunches together. They've fallen behind with their homework. They go to school. You haven't got the right socks on. You haven't got the right shoes. You've not got the right uniform. You didn't hand your homework in yesterday and you couldn't turn up yesterday. Woe you. So, you know, they're getting trapped between all these adults in their life. And I love the, when we had the acknowledgement to country yesterday, is smile from the heart. With the Imagine Futures, it's about loving, remembering to love, don't judge. These are children with no choice. They're stuck between circumstances that they have no control over. We need to love them. We need to guide them. We need to support them. 17% of our children in WA live below the poverty line. That was before COVID.
yeah.
That was before COVID. 23% of our population at the moment are children. 75% live in Perth central area. 509 schools, public schools within Perth Central. That's about 250,000 students, 3 to 4 carers in every class. That's around 32,000 students that we know of that are attending school. That doesn't account for the 18 to 25 that are outside of school or actually can't get to school. So we're talking about 40,000 people. That's a significant amount of young people out there.
Does anyone have any questions for our panellists while we've got about 5 or 10 minutes left, and we've got, yes, there's a hand in the air. We'll get a microphone over to you so that people online can also hear. I think we've only got one mic now because we're taking them all up here.
I just had a question. It's interesting to hear, the panel with everything that you're saying, and it seems there's so many silos that I don't know if there's anyone thinking about sitting down and going, well, this is what worked in the 19th century. Can we progress to the 20th century?
My friend Andrew's laughing because I have a saying that the 1950s called they'd like their values back. Unfortunately, you're right. It is very siloed. And I am a big believer in collaboration. And I suppose that's why I, agreed to come on the panel and talk about that intersectionality, because I think, even if you want to talk economically, times are tough. There's a limited bucket of funding and we all need different types of supports and services. And that actually can exacerbate that siloed effect. But the reality is that so many of us, intersect in some way, and together we are stronger. So I think it is, perhaps it's time for us to not wait for the politicians and start to do that ourselves and, develop some conversations around collaboration, because as we've all said, we've all intersection in different silos, but we're all carers. So. Yep. Yep.
Every area is just doing the same thing, and we've sort of turning the but maybe that all those heads coming down the silos and it's all doing the same.
Oh.
Together, we might be actually, not economical.
Yep.
And progressive. That's a good stuff.
What?
I find there's so many disability and carers and things that you say, if you don't fit into a certain box, whether it's in education, whether it's in any of these areas, but if you're not picking one box, then you don't.
I'm just conscious about people listening online as well who didn't hear any of that, but it was, don't give her the microphone now, but it was basically about all those different groups coming together, that you've got so many different groups and maybe not waiting for the politicians, but getting everyone together.
Yeah. Something just from a carer's, I absolutely agree with you on that. And again, from a carers WA perspective, it's something that we're very aware of as well. One of the things that we're very pro at is that systemic advocacy and trying to gather those voices. So we've got a real push at the moment. When we talked, there was a survey that was brought out yesterday from Carers Australia. You all have a voice. And one of the things that disappoints me is that our WA people are not answering those surveys. We need to be getting our voice out there. The connection that we're having with our universities to get the research available. It annoys me when I see research projects that are Eastern states. I want WA voices. We want WA voices because that is what's going to drive our policy here. That is what the active research of getting our students back into the areas that we need to do. We've brought on bringing students into our group. Because of the area that we work in, I have to be careful with the credentialing and the capabilities because obviously we work with vulnerable families, but it's trying to get the universities in because that not only grows our future practitioners, young carers also are students at the universities. It connects them into what's going on, but it also helps us with our workforce as well that understand what caring role is. So we're trying to connect in with all of that, and that's an active thing that we're doing as well. So we're not only working on a service delivery and trying to make things work on a day-to-day, we're also trying to look at what's available and work with our partners and then use that evidence to then go back to our politicians and say, hey, this is what it is. Our voices are there. You are the voices. So when you're given a survey, please answer it. Fill it in. And young people under 25 don't do that. And that's why we're working with our youth organisations at the moment, because again, and with the other cultural organisations, there need to be culturally appropriate surveys for people to participate. So again, we're trying to build those collaborations and that to go forward. And that's what we as an organisation are trying to do.
Yep.
Can I just add on that one? I'm guilty of not as much as I'd love to participate. with a caring role and trying to be across everything and churn those papers out to survive, to be afloat. This becomes one of those things. As much you want to add the voice, it becomes a very difficult
It
task
does,
in
yeah.
itself.
And maybe we need to make it more accessible of how else we do that. So it's not an online, maybe we need to look at focus groups and things like that and how we do that and how we can better connect with you to do that. So that's something I think that we'll probably.
That's very true. There's a lot of groups who find that the technical challenge is a bit much as well. Katie, what did you want to say?
I just quickly wanted to make a comment from the LGBTI perspective is that when you're talking about ticking a box, most of us, we don't actually get to be a box to be ticked in surveys. And I think if you look at what happened with the ABS census that we all completed last year, there was like a 98% response across Australia to the census. The questions around gender were male, female and other. There was no other questions around sexual orientation. So this census that the federal government put out that was promoted as being the piece of material and data collection that would drive service delivery going forward across a whole range of responses and government organisations didn't actually ask about the LGBTI community at all and what our needs are going forward.
I remember thinking generally, this is your once in 5 years and that's all you're asking me? It was like, give me some more in a whole range of areas. Yeah. Question? Hang on, we need a microphone. Someone's already got the microphone. Let's let them go.
Hi, this is for Christy. I have a 12-year-old son as a carer, and he's in the program at the schools, and he totally loves it. It's his respite to get away from everything in the classroom. But every night he goes to bed with his teddy bear that you guys gave him and his little carer's pack, and totally loves it. So thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
How quickly can you get that microphone over the other side of the room? Sorry, we're down to the one. Raise your hand again. Who was that question?
Right in front.
Thank you.
Thank you. It just regard the survey. The survey, I did it. It's very close. There's nothing applicable, like if yes or no, but should be more flexible. So ask something to not applicable or something someone want to more say about the situation, yes or no. Maybe there's something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Or that's just about it? Oh, there's one more there.
Yeah, hi. I just wonder, how do you access people who aren't online? Because there's a huge community of grandparents, carers, young carers. Not everyone has access to Wi-Fi, especially with the prices going up and up and up. So how are those people being given information?
In WA, we have 85% connectivity. Of that 15%, probably 80% of that would be carers of the digital divide. And that's one of the things we actually started to try and do a digital project during COVID. We brought in a specialist. And again, thank you, Paul, for running with this with us and doing that. It became so complex because we realised with young carers in particular in COVID, the school sent the children home. Everything went online. But then they didn't provide them the tools and how to connect up. Because often in the caring families, there's one phone and it's shared amongst the families. They don't have a laptop. So how can you connect up to your school lessons? So a lot of the work that my team do with the young carers in particular is providing them with the practical support so that they can connect in with their education. So we do within our one-on-one and our outreach with provided through the Carer Gateway is providing laptops so that they can participate, because that is getting online. All our government departments, everything out there, but universities, everything, applications are all online. MyGov, it's all online. Driving licenses, you have to find the information online. So finding laptops and getting them connected so they're not sharing, giving them Wi-Fi, helping them with tutoring as well. But yeah, digital divide is a big issue, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely.
Just Claire, and then you.
I think, you know, there is this misconception and this push to put everything online and everything, you know, but we have to come back to human rights. And we all have a human right to information in a format that meets our needs, whether you've got a disability or not. And Australia is a signatory to the Human Rights Convention, right? So our governments actually have a responsibility to ensure that it is not all online and it is not all in digital formats. Because as you say, you know, how many carers are living at or below the poverty line? How many people with a disability? How many people who are long-term unemployed are at or below the poverty line? We don't have access to online options, right? They may not be readable. We may not have access. How expensive is ink? I just had to go to Officeworks yesterday. Holy moly. You know, so that we have the right for that information to be provided in many different formats, and our governments and our local governments, wherever, need to remember that. And I don't think that's widely known, all right? And what we also need to talk about, you know, I'm a bit of a fan of disaster risk reduction. What happens when there's a bushfire? The internet does not work. The phone does not work. Do you know what I mean? So I think, you know, we as a collective, or however you want to frame that, we need to push back on that digital, everything going online and everything being digital, because not everybody has access to it. Not everybody has the physical capability of using a computer or a smartphone, you know, because they don't own one, because they cannot, because they've got movement restrictions, mobility restrictions. So I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm studying at the moment, and if I get one more textbook in an electronic format, I might cry, right? I need to be able to print and scribble. I need to have it in my hand to understand. I know that about myself.
We're just about out of time. Teresa,
Sorry,
do you want to say
started
something
me on a
that?
rant.
No, I'm just thinking for ethnically diverse people as well. It's
No, I was just thinking, talking about access, you know, actually a lot of the people in the community, they don't even know that they are carers, you know, and so that's why, you know, it is important talking about access. Majority of the people in the community, they need to know where to go, and they need to be recognized their role as a carer. And because, say, if I go to the GP's mindset is that they're all focused with the service recipient, clinical need or whatever. But then what about if daughter bring that there, daughter is suffering? Does the GP know how to refer the daughter to the appropriate place like Carers WA? And then if I go even hospital, social worker and all that, they may only be concentrating with the person they are in care. They think that that is the assessment. But what about that? So I would say this is important. We knock on their door. Government need to do something. And then they need to, this is education and the knowledge. They don't even recognize the importance of carers, you know, and I think that it is what maybe Carers WA and more other community peak bodies and all to get together and do something and really have a campaign to make sure that carers know that they are carers, you know, there are places or support out there for them. So this is what.
Final question. Yes. That was great. That was great. One more question.
I just wanted to know, is there any support for people who are carers who think they may have a disability? Because I can't find any. And to get an autism diagnosis is $3,000 minimum.
Yep.
There are no peds, there are no psychs. I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD.
Welcome to the tribe.
I suspect I have autism to some degree. I have two sons who are both autistic.
Yep.
I suspect my daughter has ADHD.
Yep.
Only one of them is diagnosed.
Yep.
There's no support.
No.
Please, you woman.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. No, I completely agree. And that's been my own personal experience as well. And that comes back to that siloing. There is no, you know, cross. I think, you know, I'm a big believer that things like assessments, yes, they will cost the government money up front, but they will save in the long run. So I think that those sorts of things need to come into our Medicare system.
400 days.
Yep.
For the 8-year-old who is violent.
Yep.
And is suspended
Yep.
9 times last year.
Yep. Yep.
400 days waiting for a pediatrician.
Yep. Yeah, and that's if the paediatrician doesn't retire in the meantime.
We
You know.
are very lucky that is public.
Yeah.
So we will see something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is for an 8-year-old who,
Yeah.
well, he was 7 at the time.
Yep. Yeah, there are massive gaps in services or in the area of assessments and things like that, and unfortunately, you know, that is I mean, PWDA, we advocate for that very regularly, to bring those things into the scheme, or into any scheme, really, Medicare, NDIS, state government funding, what you name it. But it's a huge gap and it's a huge barrier. So what we see then is people who cannot access public services go without, and things start to escalate. You know, things like employment, and I'm preaching to the converted, but you know, it's a massive gap, and it's something that I've. Yeah. So you know. Yeah.
Yeah, WA unfortunately was always on a balance anyway with its funding, with its mental health and its disabilities, and smaller percentages on contributions and people living here. COVID, it just took away all what tiny little bit of fat there was within the system with the escalation. So unfortunately, things are burgeoning over. We're finding the public health systems are well and truly overloaded. And that's backing up and it's coming down. It's like a waterfall. So it's happening all the way through. So again, that's a pushback that we need to be saying to our politicians, put some more money into it.
Yeah.
Sorry to wrap you up, but I do have to. Thank you for all your insights. Thank you for all your questions, because we're going to have about a 2-minute break only, because we're going to roll into our next panel of 4 people with current lived caring experience as well on this similar theme of the diversity of carers. This is definitely a diverse bunch. It's great to hear all those different perspectives of where you're all coming from and what you need. Would you please thank Ketty, Teresa, Chrissy and Claire. Thank you very much. Don't run away with your microphones. We'll swap a couple over, just 2 minutes, and then we'll move into our next panel, which won't quite be as long, and then we'll have a lunch break. Thank you. Stay where you are.